So it's my sincere pleasure to welcome the E&D White Professor of Music, Bill Grimes.
Thank you, Steve. Is this on? No, it's not. The mic is on.
No. Yeah, we have that buzz though.
Well, while we get the technical thing fixed, let me thank everyone for being here on what was supposed to be the end of the world. I'm serious. This numerologist has predicted that April 25th was going to be the end of the world. And my friend Greg Bagel, who's back there at the bar, not to drink, he's just sitting there, he said, well, you know, if I knew the end of the world was coming, I'd want to spend it with you, Bill, because it would seem like forever. Also, this is really memorable for me because in 1993, I was on this stage with Joe Pass. Bill Bennett was here, and all I have to prove it, two black and white photographs, one with me on stage with Joe Pass, the great legendary jazz guitarist, and then one in the dressing room back there, taken of the drummer, my friend Rich Thompson, Joe Pass, myself, and we're eating gumbo. And so I just walked back into the dressing room because that was a memorable night. So I have two fantastic students with me tonight. We're going to play a tune, then we're going to chat. From Quebec City, Francois Willette. And from Minnesota, Josh May. Josh is finishing his master's degree in jazz studies. Francois is actually a student at Laval University in Quebec City, but is here as an exchange student for one semester, and I'll be sorry to see him go, and I think he will be sorry to go home, but he's had a great time here. But these guys really played great, and so we're going to play a tune called Alone Together. So the snail was assaulted by two turtles, and the police investigated and said to the snail, "Can you tell us what happened?" He said, "Oh, it was just awful. I don't know what happened. It all happened so fast." Fortunately, we did not bring a drummer to catch all these jokes, so I won't tell him more. Going to dismiss those great students. Both of them have another gig to go to. That's all we played for. Why do I feel like Mr. Rogers? Okay. Francois is singing with a choral concert tonight. Where is it? At the church? Yes. And does everybody know about Coram Hall? Have you been to that place yet? Wow. Brand new jazz club in Baton Rouge, run by a guy named Rick Jackson. It's off of Tom Drive or Executive Park Avenue, Suite something. It's over there in a warehouse district. It seems pretty safe because it's just surrounded by industrial stuff. But check it out, Coram, a chorus with an M instead of an S at the end. And the LSU Jazz Ensemble is playing there tonight at 7:30. So that's where Josh has to go. So it's a busy time of year. But I'm really, really grateful that these opportunities exist. I have some prepared thoughts. Steve said, talk about jazz reflections. So I'm not going to read a lecture to you, but I'm going to just hit on a couple of points, because if I have some regrets over the last 34 years, one of them is it's only been within the last 8 to 10 years that I feel like I've finally figured out how to teach improvisation. Really, when I came here, I could play, and I could run a jazz ensemble. But I didn't really know how to teach improvisation. That was a very mystical kind of thing. And in the last 34 years, I've gotten to know some people. One is a man named Ed Pramick, a wonderful artist who started talking with me about creativity. Can you teach it? Not really. Can you unlock it in a student? Yeah, that's what we have to think about. So let me get started just by saying that life is an improvisation, right? We improvise every single day just to get through the day. We used to go home on Nicholson. You can't do that anymore. So, here's the latest joke, although it's not really funny. So it'll fit right in. What's the difference between an improviser and a composer? Answer. The composer has an eraser. Now, that's the first time anybody's laughed. It's not supposed to be funny. The difference is, improvised music is music in the present tense. Music that has been composed, by the very nature of what it is music in the past tense. Even if you wrote it 5 minutes ago, it's still past tense. And having the ability to edit what we compose and what we arrange and what we write on paper is a wonderful thing. It's vitally important. I didn't learn this until I got to graduate school, because as an undergraduate, I would just turn in my first drafts and wonder why I didn't get a great grade. And as I get older in my writing, in my composition and arranging, I find that I don't know when to stop editing. If somebody says, you did a chart for so-and-so 2004. Do you think you still have it? Well, yeah, I got all that stuff. Well, we'd like to just do that chart. Could you find it? Well, I'm going to open up the file and I'm going to revise it. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to make it better than it was in 2004 because I write differently now. That's an important thing to be able to do. But as an improviser, I don't have that ability. And I think for students to understand, or for the general public to understand what improvisation is and how we make it better, we have to make an analogy or draw an analogy with language. Because the analogies, the links between language, I don't know if it's linguistics, that's too many syllables, but language and improvisation, music improvisation, they're astounding. One of the things I believe that draws jazz fans to concerts, mine and others, is the vulnerability that exists on stage. If you go to a concert and you hear a Schubert trio, if you're a fan of Schubert trios, you know what that piece sounds like, or you should. It's been written down, you can study it, you can get the score and listen to the recordings, and it's going to be really close to the original, with some interpretive differences perhaps. But when people go to hear an improvised concert, an improvised music, jazz or whatever, there's a vulnerability that they can sense in the performers, because the performers are not sure exactly what they're going to play until the moment it comes out. And we'll talk more about that later. But I think that vulnerability, it's not the same as going to NASCAR. You know, waiting to see a spin out and a crash, and a guy comes out and he's on a fire and says, I'm okay. It's not the same. I've had people say to me after concerts, you know, I don't understand what you're doing, but I know it's good. And that makes me feel great, because that's the kind of music that intrigues me. When I first hear it, I'm not sure what's going on. But I like it. I know it's great, but I can't figure it out on first hearing. The difference might be is that if I'm really drawn to it, if I'm really intrigued, I'm going to sit down and break the code. I'm going to figure it out. And then whatever that thing was that intrigued me, I'm going to use it too. So when we improvise every day, let's consider conversations. A conversation that we're having tonight is a brand new conversation. We've never had it before, and we'll never have it again. We're not making up any new words. We're taking our existing vocabulary and manipulating it into saying things that are meaningful, I hope, using words that we all, but not inventing any new words. That's an important thing to remember. If we're out in daily life, we have to roll with the punches, right? A friend calls and says, hey, I'm going to be late. You readjust your schedule. That's improvising. You hit a traffic jam on Nicholson. I figured out I need to adjust my route home, so I go north of campus, cut over to River Road, and go that way. That's improvising. Imagine those same skills moved into the musical world. It's a huge connection. So I have some analogies. The more sophisticated our vocabulary of language is, the more sophisticated the conversation we can have with other people. The same is true in jazz. So if as an English student or as a person growing up, we are taught the difference between there, and there, with the three different spellings, we've just magnified the sophistication of our language quite a bit. So in music, a student has to learn to play arpeggios and scales, and they'll find patterns and licks and things that fit those particular harmonies. And if they really want to be able to make that vocabulary part of their lexicon, they have to learn that lick in all 12 keys. So do we practice jazz? We practice. That's different from rehearsing. The difference is our gaining language skills happens over a long period of time. And it's true in music, I guess, as well, but because I'm still trying to figure some of this stuff out. If you don't have any vocabulary, in other words, if you don't have any patterns, if you don't have any licks, and understand the underlying harmony and theory, then you're not going to say anything significant. Analogy number 2, dialogue. One of the great things about jazz is that it is almost always conversational. Now, if you hear a solo jazz guitar concert or a solo jazz piano concert, that's a different animal. But what we did, 3 of us, we were listening, reacting, and trying to have a musical conversation. Dialogue occurs between 2 or more people where those involved are focused, interested, passionate about the topic, yet at the same time eager to listen to others and respond at the appropriate time and in an interesting way. Do you remember a great conversation you had with some friends one night? Just think of one of the most incredible conversations, sitting around the picnic table or inside around the sofa, but people started talking, and these are people with whom you have a connection and an interest in the same topic, and their level of sophistication is similar to yours. And when you finish, you think, wow, what a great conversation that was. But that conversation has to happen with listening, disagreeing, agreeing, perhaps, but great listening skills, not just, let me tell you everything I know about the topic. Well, there are some musicians who do the very same thing. Classical music, jazz music at the highest artistic level has all of these qualities: passion, listening, responding, that all lead to a musical conversation. What the 3 of us have in common is that we speak the same musical language. And it's a language that I'm still trying to figure out, but at least I'm still working on it. Okay, analogy number 3, and if Francois is here, he'll know what I'm talking about. Speaking a foreign language is intimidating when you are around native speakers. If you speak 3 languages, you're trilingual. If you speak 2 languages, you're bilingual. If you speak 1 language, you're an American. The drummer would come. Even if our vocabulary is robust in our second language, and our knowledge of grammar and syntax complete, we often give ourselves away as non-native speakers because of an accent. And that can happen. Josh is from Minnesota, and he's been here in Louisiana for 2 years, and we can still spot the cheesehead, Wisconsin, Minnesota, don't you know, okay? And it's charming, but it gives us away as our accents. How do we get past that? The same way you get past it with language, complete immersion in the second language. Now, I can teach any good classical musician to improvise music in about 5 minutes, and they will feel, wow, that was really successful. Because I have this little system of using major scales that are tied to a descending triadic pattern. I won't go into all that. I'll talk to you guys about it later. You already know it. But they're not playing jazz. They're playing music where the notes they play fit the chords that are happening at the time. It's not really jazz because there's no jazz vocabulary. There's no history of having listened to Jerry Mulligan and Duke Ellington and all those great musicians who contributed to our language. But for a classical musician, to make that step takes a lot of effort, because these are great artists. But I'm asking them to do something incredibly difficult, and that is have a conversation in a brand new language. Have you ever been around, this is analogy number 4, have you ever been around somebody who talks too much? Yes. Been around someone who has not developed the art of listening or the art of conversation? Certain jazz players fit into that category. people who just play and play and play and play. The great Kenny Wheeler, great composer, trumpet player, had a response one time. He was playing a concert, playing a gig with a tenor saxophone player who was playing too much and didn't really have anything to say. And somebody said, "Kenny, what did you think of his playing?" He said, "Oh, it was terrible. He played chorus after chorus, each one better than the next," which is very clever, but very telling. Charlie Parker said, "If you play more than 2 choruses, you're just practicing." So I rarely play. If I'm playing the blues, I might play 2, maybe 3. But if I'm playing a tune like this, which is a long form tune, 1 chorus is enough. Because I just don't have that much to say that I think is interesting. Okay, analogy number 5. You ever tried to put the toothpaste back in the tube? You ever tried to take back a tweet or something on Facebook and somebody got a screenshot of it? That has brought down so many politicians and celebrities. So once it comes out of our mouths, or out of our Twitter, whatever that thing, I don't do any of this. I like anonymity. Once it's out, it's too late. Now the same thing is true with jazz musicians. If I play something that I don't like, I can't do anything about it. It's out there. The great Carl Fontana said to me one time, he's a graduate of LSU from the 1950s, I think Larry knows him, knew him. He said, if I'm playing a chorus and I come across something that I just really stepped all over and didn't sound right, I said, "What do you do when that happens?" He says, "I play it again." Because the sophisticated listener will go, that didn't sound right. So I play it again, and they go, "Well, that was certainly interesting." And I play it the 3rd time, and the listener goes, "He's a genius." Out of a mistake. That's improvisation. The composer, however, has the luxury of being able to edit. So those are just some initial comments about teaching improvisation. The latest one, and my friend Dan Shanahan is here, we've had some conversations about musical cognition. And I'm convinced that there is a part of our brain that has, I don't know how to describe it medically or scientifically, but we've all had the experience of walking across campus or being in the car or being somewhere and having a tune in our head. You can't get the tune out of your head. No sound is being produced, but you're hearing the music in your head. A researcher named Ed Gordon calls that audiation. To audiate means to be able to listen to something and notate it, or the reverse process, look at something on paper and know what it sounds like. Or the third part of audiation is we have a map in our brain of how this piece goes. We have an aural image. If I said to you, "Tell me how to get from here to the Walmart on College Drive," you could all do that, and you would say, "Well, we're going to go down Dalrymple, the lakes." Now you can see the lakes. Now we're going to get to Morning Glory and turn right. You with me? See what's going on? So the same is true with music. We have, if we know the piece really well, we can call on that aural image. And that's how we keep our place. That's how we know where we are. That's how we play without thinking. So, thank you for dealing with my bad voice. My wife and I are both dealing with, I don't know if it's allergies or colds or something, but we both feel rotten. I can't sleep, cough all the time, and this is helping. So, if I said to you, "Do you think before you speak?" you would probably say, "Well, gee, I hope so." That'd be... Some people don't think before they speak. It's called no filters. It's called narcissism. It's called... But let's think of thinking before we speak a little differently, because it happens to musicians too. A student said one day, "I love that solo you played. What were you thinking as you played the solo?" And I replied, "Nothing. I'm not thinking, I'm playing." Because if I'm thinking, and the way I define thinking, this will make sense. If I think about what I'm doing, I'm way behind. So do we think before we speak? We think as we speak. And when I say we think, we have a thought, and because we have a sophisticated vocabulary in whatever language, we speak. We don't go through the process of, now, assuming this is your native language, we don't go through the process of saying, okay, where does the verb go in the sentence? I'm not sure. Or should I put a pause there because there's a comma? Or how do I make the TH sound with my tongue? Because native German speakers don't know how to make that sound. It's not part of their language. So that's the kind of thinking we don't do. Now take that and apply it to music. I'm playing along and I think, okay, the next chord is a D minor 7 chord, and that's D, F, A, C, and I can add E, which is the ninth, and the chord scale relationship is that it takes the D Dorian, which is the same as C major, or it's a minor scale with a raised 6th, and by the time I've thought that, we're into the next chorus. There's no time to do that kind of thinking. So that's when I call on my aural image of the piece, and I hear the melody or the bass line or whatever it is, I hear it in my head and I play it without thinking. I don't have time to think. I can only play what's in that aural image. The same with language. Or am I crazy? Now, that's what I've been harping on with my students for the last 2 years. And it finally dawned on me after 32 years, this is the way you get to a level of preparation that we spend a lot of time in the practice room learning to play those arpeggios and those scales and learning to get those patterns and those licks and being able to have the muscle memory to execute that pattern when we hear it in our head. And there have been lots of times when I hear something, I say, yeah, I can play that. And, no, you weren't really prepared to execute what your brain told you. So in that case, my reach exceeds my grasp. So now I have to go back and practice learning those patterns. And I'm really sorry that the first 25 years or so, my students didn't get this. But it's sort of been an epiphany for me that this is what drives us when we speak. It's the same process that drives us when we improvise music. And those are my principles, and if you don't like them, well, I have others. Groucho, that's not mine. I've probably talked long enough. Who has questions or answers?